Christopher, one of the videos you and I did just a couple weeks ago was how to sanctify sex in marriage. And we got a few good comments. And there's one comment in particular I wanted to talk about because it's something I've certainly struggled with myself. My wife has as well. And it has to do, for the most part, kind of the stage in life we're in. I've got 5 kids. We have made a decision. My wife is 51 now. We've made a decision to not have any more children. We've practiced NFP ever since we've been married. And now we're in this stage of how do you manage and balance properly the coming together in nuptial union in one flesh with the desire to also not have children. And that's, there's a lot wrapped up in there. We can't cover all that right now, but how do we do that not just responsibly, but really with purity of heart and with honesty and without resentment towards the times where I don't want to say can't have sex because we could, but where we choose not to because we don't want to have children. So here's a comment that somebody left that dives into this, and we can talk about this for a minute. So here's a man, he says, I'm a confirmed Catholic. I've been raised in the faith. This is one of my most difficult problems. I have 5 children, like me. Natural family planning does not prevent you from having children. The equation becomes if you want to have sex, I have to be prepared to have a baby. And then he goes on a little bit, and then he says, am I supposed to just sleep with my wife twice a month so as to not get pregnant? Am I sinning because I want to have sex with a woman I swore an oath to before God? And he says, I send this with deep respect and understand that I'm frustrated due to dealing with this issue for years. So I just want to honor that difficulty. That's a real difficulty. And you and I both know, being in this work, there are many, many couples who struggle with this and have this difficulty. And one of the things that I have seen over and over, and I say this with sensitivity and reverence to this man and anybody else who struggles with this, but one of the things I've seen is the mistake of blaming natural family planning as though that is the problem. So natural family planning is just a beautiful method for us to understand the woman's body and her fertility cycle, which allows us then to make what we hope to be proper decisions, whether to have a child or not have a child, or even just how to enter into a greater love relationship by understanding the natural rhythm of how God created the woman. So natural family planning is not ever really the problem. It's just a method. So we have to go deeper. We have to look at just what's stirring up inside of us and the dynamic in our own hearts and the dynamic with our spouse. So I want to ask you to speak into that a little bit.
Yeah, first I want to say, hey, if you're just jumping into this video out of context, check out the other videos we have where we're dealing with contraception versus natural family planning and why the church makes these distinctions. They're very, very important distinctions. So we don't have time, as you said, to get into all that right now. But this idea of, I want to have sex with my wife, she's fertile, we're not in a position to bring another life into the world right now, and then I get mad or frustrated at the church or at natural family planning or at my wife's fertility. Well, I'm looking to blame something. I want to zoom in on this, that the real question is, what does it mean to love your wife tonight, now, in this situation? And it might mean you abstain from sex. And if love demands abstinence, let's just look at that. Every married couple knows that many times in married life, many times in married life, love demands abstinence.
Absolutely.
Sexual intercourse is meant to be understood as the renewal of our marriage commitment. We are expressing with our bodies the vows we made at the altar. That's what we're meant to be doing. Well, there are many times in married life where you might want to renew your wedding vows through intercourse, but love demands you abstain. Maybe one of you is sick. Love demands that you abstain. Maybe, I jokingly say, maybe you're at the in-laws and there are thin walls. Love may demand that you abstain. Maybe it's after pregnancy, right? Love would demand immediately after childbirth that you abstain, right? And maybe you have a serious reason to avoid a child. Love demands that you honor the way God made your wife and made you and made your union. And if you have a serious reason not to bring another life into the world, the loving thing to do is to abstain when your wife is fertile. Love demands that. What we're really frustrated with is not that my wife's fertile or that NFP says we have to abstain. What we're frustrated with is the demands of love. I want to quote here from Dr. Gregory Popcak. I reference him in my book, Good News About Sex and Marriage, on this issue. I'm responding to a guy who's frustrated with natural family planning, much like this guy is. As Catholic counselor, Dr. Greg Popcak says, we need to recognize that any frustration we feel in practicing the abstinence required of natural family planning is a sign that natural family planning is doing the job it's meant to do. What's the job it's meant to do? It's meant to help us grow in virtue. It's helping us grow in virtue and authentic freedom. This is the key. Freedom means I can say yes or I can say no. If I can't say no, my yes is emptied of its meaning. Right? I'll often ask a room full of people, I'll say, ladies, how many of you want to be married to a man who cannot say no to his sexual desires? I've asked hundreds of thousands of women that question over the years, and never has a hand gone up. Right? Women intuit right away, if a man cannot say no to his sexual desires, his yes doesn't mean anything. So abstaining is calling us to practice self-mastery. The problem is we often lack self-mastery. So Popcak goes on to say, when we feel those frustrations, we must learn to recognize them as growing pains of personal maturity and the capacity for expressing authentic love, right? Sexual union, if it is to express authentic love, it has to come from freedom. What's the difference between us and the animals, right? Why do we spay and neuter our dogs and cats? Why don't we just ask them to abstain? Well, there's the difference. They can't abstain. We can. We have freedom. Freedom is the capacity to love. When we're not free in our sexual desires, when our sexual desires are in control of us and we're not in control of them, well, now we're behaving like animals, right? We're responding to an instinct we can't control, and that's not an act of love. In those times, Popcak goes on to say, in those times when the growing pains hurt the most, we're not feeling a loving urge that must be satisfied. We're feeling a selfish urge that must be crucified if we are to be transformed and reclaim the freedom that our fallenness has taken from us. Here's a very, very important point. The way we experience our sexual desires in this fallen world comes from our broken, fallen humanity. There's goodness in there, but it's gotten twisted up. It's become inverted. It's become a self-seeking instinct akin to the animals, right? We have an itch and we feel like we need to scratch it. And when we're in that zone and we have this, idea that the church is telling me, you're not allowed, you have to abstain, and we want to blame natural family planning for the fact that actually I'm not master of myself. This is a place where we need to die. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. What does that mean? It means it's going to hurt.
And this is the human condition. This isn't unique to certain people.
It's not just unique to men.
That's right. This is all of us.
That's right. This is humanity. This is fallen humanity. Yeah. The way we experience our fallen humanity is in need of a remedy. And as I often say, it's okay that we're broken here because there is a remedy. Yeah. But it's not okay to call our brokenness health. Yeah. What we're really frustrated with is the demands of love. We're not animals who can't control ourselves. We are persons, and we're called to experience the freedom for which Christ has set us free, which is the freedom to love as he loves. And Jesus says, after he gives us that commandment, love one another as I have loved you, he says one of my favorite lines in the whole gospel. I tell you this so that my joy might be in you and your joy might be complete. Well, time out there. The joy he's talking about is the eternal ecstasy of the Trinitarian communion of life-giving love. He's talking about, when we apply that to marriage, and specifically the marital embrace, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Why? So that Christ's joy might be in us and our joy might be complete. Yeah. He's talking about the full grandeur of marriage as a participation in the ecstasy and joy of the Trinity. When I experience a fallen inclination to indulge a selfish desire, and I say, I want that, what I'm saying is, I prefer the momentary pleasure of a really selfish instinct to indulge over the joy of participating in the inner life of the Trinity. To which I respond, okay, that's a bad choice if you prefer that over that. Here's an analogy which I'll just share quickly. Anyone can bang on a piano and make meaningless noise, right? A concert pianist can also spontaneously walk up to a piano and make beautiful music. But behind that beautiful music is a lifetime of sacrifice, discipline, training. When we indulge a selfish instinct in sexual relations with our wife, it's like banging on a piano. We need to learn that self-mastery, that we need to train ourselves to make beautiful music. And that ain't always easy. But the fruits of it, you can't tell me it's not worth fighting for.
It is
worth
worth
it. Absolutely worth
It is
fighting
worth
for.
it, yeah. Amen.